Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtiki Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Caitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pricharine Nirviseshasha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we continue our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Text 17. Lord Brahma has been explaining how all the material manifestation is situated in the universal body of the Lord. Swadhishnyam pratapan prano bahischa pratapati asau evam virajam pratapams tapati antarbahi puman. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding His universal form, maintains everything in the creation, both internally and externally. The universal form of the Lord, or the impersonal feature of the Lord, known as the Brahmajyoti, is clearly explained here and compared to the radiation of the sun. The sunshine may expand all over the universe, but the source of the sunshine, namely the sun planet, or the deity known as Surya Narayana, is the basis of such radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the basis of the impersonal Brahmajyoti radiation, or the impersonal feature of the Lord. So as we see, the sun has there's a sun planet, and then there is light coming out from the sun, the sunshine. So similarly, Krishna, he has his personal form, and there is the light coming out of him, which is called the Brahmajyoti. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14.27. So the universal form of the Lord is the secondary imagination of the impersonal form of the Lord. But the primary form of the Lord is Shyam Sundar, with two hands playing on his eternal flute. So the universal form, how we are imagining that all the universes are placed in the body of all the universes, all the planets, everything in the material creation, how they are situated in the body of the Lord. Same with the light which is coming from the Lord. That is just a partial representation. But his real true form, his personal form, his original form is Shyam Sundar with two hands, and where he's always playing the flute. 75% of the expansive radiation of the Lord is manifested in the spiritual sky, Tripad Vibhuti, and 25% of his personal radiation comprehends the entire expansion of the material universes. So the light which is coming out from the Lord's body, the Brahma Jyoti, 75% of this light, that is comprises the spiritual world. And only a tiny portion, only 25%, it comprises the material world. This is also explained and stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10.42. Thus, the 75% expansion of his radiation is called his internal energy, whereas the 25% expansion is called the external energy of the Lord. The living entities who are residents of the spiritual as well as the material expansions are his marginal energy, Tatastha Shakti, and they are at liberty to live in either of the energies, external or internal. So the internal energy of the Lord, the spiritual worlds, that is 75%. And then the external energy of the Lord, the material world, that comprises 25%. And we, the living entities, we have a choice. Do we want to stay in the spiritual world or we want to stay in the material world? We want to be with the spiritual energy or we want to be with the Lord's material energy? It is totally at our, it's just totally our choice. Where do we want to be? Those who live within the spiritual expansion of the Lord are called liberated souls, whereas the residents of the external expansion are called the conditioned souls. We can just make an estimate of the number of the residents of the internal expansions in comparison with the number of residents in the external energy, and may easily conclude that the liberated souls are far more numerous than the conditioned souls. So because the material world comprises only 25%, so the living entities living in this 25% is of course much lesser than the living entities who are living in the spiritual world, which is 75%. It is so much more greater. And then we who are in the material world are called conditioned souls because we are conditioned with this material thinking, with the material modes of nature. And the living entities who live in the spiritual world, they are called liberated souls. They are not conditioned to this material modes of nature. They are liberated from the modes of nature. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so reading on, text 18. So amratasya bhayasyesho martyam anam yad atyagat mahimesha tato brahman purushasya duratyayaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller of immorality and fearlessness, and he is transcendental to death and the fruitive actions of the material world. O Narad, O Brahmana, it is therefore difficult to measure the glories of the Supreme Person. The glories of the Lord in the transcendental 75% of the Lord's internal potency are stated in the Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda. It is said there that those planets in the spiritual sky, which comprises the 75% expansion of the internal potency of the Lord are far, far greater than those planets in the total universes composed of the external potency of the Lord. So even in the Padma Purana, it is mentioned that the spiritual world is 75% and is much more greater than this material world, which is only 25%, which is just a tiny spark.
ऐसी आज धूप नहीं है ना, खोल दे थोड़ा.
So in the Caitanya Caritamrta, the total universes in the external potency of the Lord are compared to a bucketful of mustard seeds. One mustard seed is calculated to be a universe itself. In one of the universes in which we are now living, the number of planets cannot be counted by human energy. And so, how can we think of the sum total in all the universes, which are compared to a bucketful of mustard seeds? So imagine, in Caitanya Charitamrita, there is a description that the Sheshnag, the Ananta Shesh, the Sheshnag expansion of Lord Balaram, he's holding all the universes on his heads, on his many, many hoods, like tiny, tiny mustard seeds, since time immemorial. And he's continuously chanting the glories of Krishna. Continuously chanting his glories. And he's chanting the glories of Krishna eternally. Until today, he's not come to the end of the glories of Krishna. Glories of Krishna are eternal, unlimited. And so these universes, they are compared that you take a bucket and put or fill it with mustard seeds. That is how this material world is compared. For us, it's so huge. This whole Earth planet is so big. And what to speak about the other planets in this universe? We don't even know how many planets are in our own universe. And like this, there are numberless universes. And this is compared to just mustard seeds for the Lord. So how great is the Lord? And the planets in the spiritual sky are at least 3 times the number of those in the material sky. Such planets, being spiritual, are in fact transcendental to the material modes. Therefore, they are constituted in the mode of unalloyed goodness only. So as here in this material world, we are all under the influence of the modes of nature. In the spiritual world, there is no Rajogun, Sattvagun, Tamogun. There's no goodness, passion, and ignorance. There is only pure goodness. Everything is in its pure state. The conception of spiritual bliss, Brahmananda, is fully present in those planets. Each of them is eternal, indestructible, and free from all kinds of limitations experienced in the material world. Eternal, the spiritual world, every planet. There are unlimited planets in the spiritual world, and they are all eternal. Indestructible, they can't be destroyed. And free from all kinds of limitations. We have so much limitations here. We have, first of all, with time. Everything has a expiry date, manufacture date. So we are limited by time. And then we are limited by our capability, capacities, So all this is absent in the spiritual world. Each of them is self-illuminating and more powerfully dazzling than, if we can imagine, the total sunshine of millions of mundane suns. That's how bright they are. The inhabitants of those planets are liberated from birth, death, old age, and diseases, and have full knowledge of everything. They are all godly and free from all sorts of material hankerings. They have nothing to do there except to render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Narayana, who is the predominating deity of such Vaikuntha planets. So we can see here that in our existence in this material world, we are all struggling so hard just to maintain our body, to maintain our relations, to have a standing in society. It's such a struggle. Everything is such a struggle. But in in the spiritual world, they don't have to struggle separately just to maintain themselves. It's just transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord. And over here, we always have the concept, why should I serve another? If I serve another, the other person will exploit me. But Krishna is not like that. He does not exploit us. The service is an exchange of love. For example, we love our family, so we serve them. We serve our children, our spouses, our parents, because there is love. So that's why we serve. So similarly, the exchange between the Lord and his devotees is based on love. Those liberated souls are engaged incessantly in singing songs mentioned in the Sama Veda. Vede Sangapada Karma Panishade Gayanti Yam Samagaha. All of them are personifications of the 5 Upanishads. Tripad Vibhuti, or the 75%, known as the internal potency of the Lord, is to be understood as the kingdom of God far beyond the material sky. So in the spiritual world, everybody is singing songs. It's said that every word is a song there and every step is a dance. It's so joyous. When we are joyful, we sing and we dance. You know, when we are happy, we hum our favorite tune and we dance. So in the spiritual world, everybody is just eternally happy. So they're eternally singing and dancing. And then when we speak of the Pada Vibhuti, or the 25% comprising his external energy, we should understand that this refers to the sphere of the material world. It is also said in the Padma Purana that the kingdom of Tripad Vibhuti is transcendental, whereas the Pada Vibhuti is mundane. So even the Padma Purana, Padma Purana mentions that the spiritual world is transcendental. It's not in these modes of nature. And whereas the material world, it's temporary. It's in the clutches of the modes of nature. Tripad Vibhuti is eternal, whereas the Pada Vibhuti is transient. The Lord and his eternal servitors in the transcendental kingdom all have eternal forms which are auspicious, infallible, spiritual, and eternally youthful. In other words, there is no birth, death, old age, and disease. So if we want to get a permanent solution, that we don't want to get old, we don't want to have disease, and we don't want to die, then we should transfer ourselves to the spiritual world. We should somehow or the other have this desire. Let me go to the spiritual world. That eternal land is full of transcendental enjoyment and full of beauty and bliss. We all like to see beautiful things, and we all want to be happy, and we want to always eternally enjoy. But in our experience, we can see that the enjoyment is so little after so much endeavor. And then ultimately everything leads in frustration. But if we want eternal enjoyment, eternal bliss, then we should make efforts to go to the spiritual world. This very fact is also corroborated in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the transcendental nature is described as Amrita. As described in the Vedas.
Sorry, so there are 2 types of vibhutis, right? So this is the attainment, the vibhutis are the attainment.
Well, the spiritual world is called the Tripad Vibhuti and the material world is called the Pad Vibhuti. It just depends where we want to be.
So just according to our desire. So
yes.
We should aim for the Pad Vibhuti.
Tripad Vibhuti.
Tripad Vibhuti.
The spiritual world.
Okay.
Yeah. We should endeavor, our thoughts, actions, our words should be in such a way that can bring us that this life can be our next life, and in this life can be our last life, and in our next life we are transferred to the spiritual sky. That's how we should try to endeavor with our every thought, word, and action.
Okay.
So the Supreme Lord is the Lord of immortality, Or in other words, the Lord is immortal. And because he's the Lord of immortality, he can award immortality to his devotees. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.16, the Lord also assures that whoever may go to his abode of immortality shall never return to this mortal land of threefold miseries. So the Lord, he never dies, he's eternal. He always exists. And his devotees are also always existing. And if we go to the spiritual world, we don't have to again take birth and leave the body. The soul is eternal. The soul, whether it's in the material world or spiritual world, is always eternal. But the thing is that in the material world, we, the soul, are always taking on different bodies in different species of life. And in that, we are undergoing the threefold miseries. The threefold miseries are that every time, at every moment, each of us is affected by miseries either caused by our own body and mind, miseries that are caused to us by other living entities. The other living entities could be that some animal attacks us, some pest, mosquito bites us, or even some other person speaks in a sharp way to us, which hurts us. And then the other misery is caused by the natural disasters, typhoons, earthquakes, famine, no rains, you know. So at each moment, each of us in this material world is subjected to this threefold miseries. But in the spiritual world, there is no these threefold miseries. Everybody is happy and blissful. The Lord is not like the mundane Lord. The mundane master or Lord never enjoys equally with his subordinates, nor is a mundane Lord immortal, nor can he award immortality to his subordinate. So over here, we all, to a certain degree, we have people under us, whatever position we are in. So we are like tiny lords, but then we are not immortal. Neither the people who are, subordinate to us, can we make them immortal. We are going to die and they are also going to die. So because we are going to die, we cannot save them. And then over here, we have noticed that if there's somebody a position of power, he does not give equal enjoyment to another. There is always a difference. Oh, I'm the master and another person is my servant or my subordinate. So I cannot enjoy equally with him. I should enjoy more. My level of enjoyment should be more. The Supreme Lord, who is the leader of all living entities, can award all the qualities of his personality unto his devotees, including immortality and spiritual bliss. But Krishna is not like that. He's not miserly. Even though we are tiny compared to him, we are so tiny, he gives us, he says, I'm immortal, you also be immortal. I'm happy always, you also be happy. I'm Satchidananda, you also be Satchidananda. Full of knowledge, bliss, and eternal. In the material world, there is always anxiety or fearfulness in the hearts of all living entities. But the Lord, being himself the supreme fearless, also awards the same quality of fearlessness to his pure devotees. So the more we are connected to the Lord, to that degree, we will be fearless. Otherwise, we can see here, we are always so fearful, so anxious, because the material world keeps changing. So right now we might be comfortable, but something is there in the subconscious. Oh, this situation might change. It might change. And so we don't want it to change. So we are always fearful of that. And there's always, of course, a fear of death. And there's anxiety, is somebody going to come and attack me? So we are always in that anxiety. But when we are in touch with Krishna, the pure devotees, they are fearless, totally fearless. Mundane existence is itself a kind of fear, because in all mundane bodies, the effects of birth, death, old age, and disease always keep a living being compact in fear. In the mundane world, there's always the influence of time, which changes things from one stage to another. And the living entity, originally being avikar or unchangeable, suffers a great deal on account of changes due to the influence of time. So we can see with time, everything changes. We might be in a very comfortable position right now, but with the effect of time, that changes, even though we don't want to. And then because of this change, we end up suffering. We don't want things to change. But change is inevitable in the material world. Night becomes day, day becomes night. We are happy. There is some cause for happiness. Then again, that changes, and then there is cause for distress. So like that, it keeps changing. And with that, we keep suffering. Although we are unchangeable, the soul never changes. It's only the body that keeps changing. The soul never dies or becomes old or becomes diseased. It's only the body. The changing effects of eternal time are conspicuously absent in the immortal kingdom of God, which should therefore be understood to have no influence of time and therefore no fear whatsoever. In the spiritual world, there is no, the time is there only for the sake of pastimes, but it does not have the effect that it has here in the material world, the deteriorating effect that with time everything finishes here in the material world. But in spiritual world, there is no like this. There is day and night, but that's only for the sake of pastimes. So in the material world, so-called happiness is the result of one's own work. One may become a rich man by dint of one's own hard labor, and there are always fear and doubts as to the duration of such acquired happiness. But in the kingdom of God, no one has to endeavor to attain a standard of happiness. Here in this material world, we have to struggle a lot to get some happiness, to maintain whatever, to make money, to keep our relatives happy, our family happy. We are always endeavoring. There is effort required. So there is hard labor required for this happiness. But also at the back of our mind, we are always, oh, I don't know how long this happiness will last, because we all have experienced that it's a cycle. Happiness comes and then distress comes. But in the spiritual world, we don't have to endeavor. We don't have to. We are just happy over there because Satchid Ananda, bliss. We are all happy there by nature. Happiness is the nature of the spirit, as stated in the Vedanta Sutras. Ananda Mayo Bhayasat. The spirit is by nature full of happiness. Happiness in spiritual nature always increases in volume with a new phase of appreciation. There is no question of decreasing the bliss. So here in the material world, we always have that experience that, oh, right now I'm so happy. But then if I keep doing the same activity, it doesn't make me happy anymore. Maybe I like to watch a particular movie. It makes me really happy. But if I watch it continuously, 100 times continuously, again and again and again, I might not even want to know about it anymore, you know. It decreases when we do the same thing. And also, even if we do another thing, we can see that happiness is just short-lived. After some time, we want to change the activity. Such unalloyed, but in spiritual world, it's not like that. Spiritual world, just by being there, we are happy. We don't have to endeavor to be happy. Just like now we are hearing about Krishna, we don't have to separately endeavor to be happy. It's just blissful hearing about Krishna. Just being in touch with the holy name is blissful. Such unalloyed spiritual bliss is nowhere to be found within the orbit of the material universe, including the Janaloka planets, or for that matter, the Maharloka or Satyaloka planets, because even Lord Brahma is subject to the laws of fruitive actions and the law of birth and death. So even if we transfer ourselves to the higher heavenly planets, the Janaloka, Maharloka, it's very difficult to go to these planets. These living entities on these planets are very purified souls, and they have a lot of knowledge, they've acquired a lot of pious activities to go there. But even if we do all that and go there, we still are gonna die. We have to give up the body, and after we finish our time in those planets, we again have to come back to the earthly planets or go to the hellish planets, depending on our law of karma. It is therefore stated here, Turatyaya, or in other words, spiritual happiness in the eternal kingdom of God cannot be imagined even by the great brahmacharis or sannyasis who are eligible to be promoted to the planets beyond the region of heaven. Or the greatness of the Supreme Lord is so great that it cannot be imagined even by the great brahmacharis or sannyasis. But such happiness is factually attained by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord, by His divine grace. So if we want to be truly happy, we should endeavor to become a devotee of the Supreme Lord. And we can become unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord by hearing and chanting about Him. Chanting the holy name and hearing and chanting the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we can be eternally happy. No more birth, death, old age, and disease. Is that okay?
Yes.
So we can stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shilpa Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.